Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. This is one that I probably would have reviewed sooner in a different 2020, but quarantine haze made it a difficult read for some reason, so I pushed it off. But here I am, finally reviewing Calico Thunder Rides Again by TA Hernandez. This is a kind of alternate 1920s, a fantasy norm world in which humans and all other forms of magical creatures like dwarves and ogres and fairies all live side by side. You get like ogres in suits and stuff. And instead of alcohol being prohibited, the ban of this world is on magical items, jinxes, charms, potions, etc. So there are still speakeasies and all of that fun stuff, but they're selling like luck potions or luck charms instead. And in the midst of all this, we are focused on a circus, the Strickland Circus. Jake inherited the running of the circus from his father, a father that was very absent and not a big part of his life, so he's like low-key resentful, but said father is dead, circus is his, and he finds out that dad had some gigantic debts to the mob that the mob now wants paid in full. So he has to come up with a very large sum of money in a very short period of time. And I really appreciated the juxtaposition of this fantasy norm world with all these magical creatures and what is a very realistic big conflict. And this one actually makes me more anxious than a lot of ones because I in general get really anxious by owing large amounts of money. Like, student loans are currently in forbearance. There's no interest on student loans right now. You don't have to pay right now. I still am, because owing large amounts of money makes me so nervous. So this book, the premise made me, particularly me, extra anxious, and that's why I put it off a lot, because I didn't like the idea of it. And there's some nice twists and moments. I will say I liked that the title, Calico Thunder Rides Again, does have there is a moment in the book where you can be like, aha, she's writing again. But I won't go too much into it, not to spoil. So as this is a circus, they have all of the exotic fun animals, and a lot of those animals are magical. Basilisks and griffins, and yes, a dragon called Calico Thunder. She is an older dragon, she doesn't do much, and she might have some kind of sentience, but it's never really gone into all that much. It's much more focused on Jake trying to get all this money. I loved the few characters there were, because in all honesty, it's namely Jake and Grace and Bruno for our protagonists. Grace is his romantic interest, and it's usually really hard to convince me that characters love each other when they've been together since before the start of the story. I know that's the same way for a lot of people, how it's more fun to actually get to watch the romance blossom, but this one was really believable. She was working with him a really long time. They also had some genuine struggles because Grace genuinely loved Jake's father, and Jake's father was basically her adoptive father throughout most of her life, where he wasn't there at all for Jake's. So they often fight about who Cliff Strickland was, and it creates a very believable relationship where it's not all perfect, but it's not constant fighting making you think that they're gonna break apart at any given second. It was very nice. The threat feels very properly big. The mob is there, and Jake feels very small against them. He's also just a very sympathetic character all around. He was once a rodeo rider, only in this world that means he rode dragons, but a huge accident and injury kind of ended his career really early. So already at the age of, I think he's supposed to be early 30s, he's already got that kind of world weariness about him, but he's still attached to the circus and the people within it. I really feel the relationships. I love Bruno, the dwarf that helps him. Basically it's magic calling. They use mirrors to call each other instead of phones, which at this period of time would have been very hard for anyone in a circus to keep track of anyone else. But I really appreciated that. Like I said before, for me personally, the conflict was very anxiety inducing just because of my personal things, but that goes a long way to show of how realistic it was. And I'm going to try and explain this without giving too much away. I liked that the ban came into the story in more than just setting. Like, it wasn't just a cool idea, let's do this. It was genuinely a certain motivations and certain things certain characters did were because of this band. And it was foreshadowed actually in the beginning, and I didn't realize that till later. But there was a certain moment early on, back when Jake is first trying to get the money, that kind of foreshadows someone else's motivation. And again, it's hard for me to explain it without spoiling anything, but there was one of those, oh, when that character did that thing, it foreshadowed that these characters were going to do this thing, and all because of the band. And I was really intrigued by that concept. The writing style is very easy to follow. The villains that you see various members of the Veterian mob. I wanted to punch each of them in the face, which is what you want with your villains. I usually judge how good a villain is based on how much I actually physically want to go after them. So that was well done. The only thing I would say is there were certain points where the story telegraphed a little bit too much that something bad was going to happen, which is kind of just a me thing. Maybe I'm naturally distrustful, but if I'm reading a story and we're like decently into the story and suddenly everything is going really well, just so super well, I'm sitting there going, okay, I don't trust any of this. When's it gonna go wrong? And it had that just a little bit too well, although that was also some foreshadowing done at the very beginning of the book, so maybe you weren't supposed to trust it. And then of course at one point we had our darkest night before the dawn, but to a certain extent, while it felt maybe a hint, just a brownish brush of formulaic, the setting and the characters kept it from being overly so. And in general, I really enjoyed this one. If you are either, I would say, a fantasy lover or a like 1920s prohibition golden era of the circus lover, you'll like this one, because there is enough fantasy for it to be a definite thing, but like our protagonist isn't solving his problem through magic. He's not magicking up all of this money, and I appreciated that. And again, I appreciated that the setting in general of the band, aka Magic Prohibition, played into the story in the end, more so than you would think it would, and that in reality, the big bad of this world wasn't some super magic-y curse thing, but something that was a very big problem in the actual Prohibition era, aka organized crime families. So in general, this is a very quick read. It's, I think, exactly 200 pages, which is what I love when my indie reads are like easy writing style, but also quick reads. So if you're not as induced to anxiety as me by the thought of owing large amounts of money to the extent that it makes me too anxious to keep reading at times, especially in a weird world as 2020 is. And yes, 2020 is basically its own canon universe separate from the human timeline, I swear. But anyway, if that doesn't give you as much anxiety as it gives me, then this should be a really quick, easy read for you if you're looking for that. I know a lot of people are looking for that at this time, but I would definitely suggest this one. I've had it on my list for forever. TA Hernandez and I have been Twitter mutuals for forever, so you know this has been a long time coming, but in the end I gave it 5 stars, a definite awesome read, and the concept that it actually follows through with. If anything, there was some more things I would have liked a little bit more delved into with some characters that just in passing talk about the price, the hidden price of the jinxes and charms they buy. I wish that had been gone into a little bit more. It's kind of like a sub-theme, but beyond that, it was really well done. Would definitely suggest it. And I hope that I continue with my own little reading renaissance. I feel like I'm finally coming away from a slump. So if you are an indie author and you would like a review like this one, please send me an email. I will have my email down in the description below. I will also have my review policy down there. Please give that a read through. It answers a lot of questions and saves us a lot of time. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.